Hey, welcome to the Texas Legislative Update. I'm David Blackman here with Jason Modglin, the president of the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers. Jason, how's things in Austin right now?
It's it's busy. They're working a pretty full Friday. The House is slated to work tomorrow, Saturday. We're coming up to deadlines. May 11th is the deadline for House bills to be out of the House floor past second reading, and they'll basically work up until midnight on Thursday. But basically take Sunday off. But that's about it. Working now through next Thursday.
Okay, well, this is episode 15, the end of the 16th week of the session. We missed 1 week, and this is the week ended May 4th, or May 5th, excuse me, Cinco de Mayo. Happy Cinco de Mayo, everyone.
Happy Cinco de Mayo. We can always celebrate,
Absolutely.
running the French out of the Americas. So,
Yep. It's a noble thing right
that's
there,
a
by
noble
God.
thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Everybody have a margarita to celebrate tonight.
Amen.
Jason may need three of them after this week. So let's get started here. I guess the first thing on the agenda I wanted to just mention is Ted Cruz attracted another challenger, my own congressman from up here in District 32 in North Texas, a Democrat named Colin Allred. Representative Allred becomes the second Democrat to announce a challenge, in addition to State Senator Roland Gutierrez out of San Antonio, who announced a couple of weeks ago he was planning to run. I guess it'll be a vigorous primary in the Democratic Party, if nothing else, for that Senate seat.
That's right. That's right. Um, uh, Been there in Congress for several sessions and trying to either up or out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good for him. He's developed something of a profile, I guess, during the last year or so up there in Washington, and has been out front on some issues. And he certainly presents a very striking profile. He's really good on television. His ads are great, and I've seen him speak several times, and he's really a fine public speaker. And so, I I have to, just a personal opinion. I mean, I think he'll be a more credible opponent than if they just ran Beto again, right? So
Hmm. Hmm.
anyway, anyway,
Yeah, absolutely.
enough of that political talk, guys. We're not here to talk politics. So another thing happened this week, Tuesday. The Capitol was actually shut down for a little while. Talk about what happened there.
It was shut down. There was very briefly an interruption in the House chamber, so that you have a gallery that's one floor above that kind of looks down on the House chamber, and there was both supporters but also opponents, and then they turned into protesters of a bill, Senate Bill 14 by Senator Donna Campbell, related to transgender healthcare and the age by which that could be accessed without a parent and doctor involvement. So there was a commotion basically, and then banners were dropped from the gallery into the chamber, and so the presiding officer, the Speaker of the House, is able to clear the chamber and clear the gallery. And so he did that for the safety of the members there and to prevent outbursts and interruption. But then there continued to be kind of disruptions outside the chamber. Um, uh, some pushing, I guess, the right way to describe it,
And
with
some
some law
people were
enforcement.
were arrested, right? I mean,
Some
the
people were arrested. I don't know that there was any actual charges, and so with that, then they opted to just kind of push the rest of the folks, have them go outside of the Capitol. And shortly after that, there was a valid point of order called on the bill, and that certainly took the animosity out of the day a little bit. The bill was sent back to its respective committee. A bill analysis had to be fixed. And now it's back on the floor actually today. So it'll be up later this afternoon. And kind of expecting the same thing. There's a pretty high law enforcement in the Capitol today. Thankfully, having the able to catch an office today, and so sitting in an office and in the Capitol and doing the podcast today, but it could be the same thing this afternoon and potentially tomorrow, clearing the
So if we
gallery.
hear the fire alarm go off, that's what it is.
If the fire alarm goes off, that potentially is what is happening over the next 30 minutes or so. Yes, sir.
Well, things do get emotional during these sessions. That's not the first time that's happened at the Capitol. It won't be the last time. And
It seems to happen on a 10-year cycle. I
Yeah.
was here the last time it occurred, and that was related to Wendy Davis and
That's
some
right.
abortion legislation. So
It's always the social issues.
it's the social issues, and then when it gets hot, it just ratchets up ratchets everybody up. So yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go on and talk about some legislation here. You talked about Chapter 313, need for replacement for that law on our last episode, and now we've got a replacement bill. House Bill 5 was voted out of the House this week. Talk about what that bill will do.
We did. A new property tax abatement program for capital intensive projects. There used to be a program, but there was a lot of criticism of that program, that it wasn't as transparent. It didn't necessarily deliver on the jobs that many lawmakers wanted to see in those types of programs. And so really the advocates, which are a mix of oil and gas, heavy industrial, manufacturing, lots of business interest in the state, really said, how can we continue to be competitive, particularly with other states in the Gulf Coast, but then across the country, because we have such a high property tax in this state. Other states don't have the same method of taxation, and so capital intensive projects are taxed higher here in Texas. They're certainly they're somewhat captive, just based on our population, based on our proximity to oil and gas in the Gulf of Mexico. But at the same time, when deciding where you want to invest in projects, and if you can invest right next door in Louisiana, and it's zero new taxes, and in some cases you're chasing a payment or a bonus from the state, and you're looking at Texas, and you're looking at pretty hefty property taxes on that capital improvement. It's fairly easy to see, kind of where the number crunchers push projects. So House Bill 5 by Todd Hunter out of the Corpus Christi area, it passed the House chamber yesterday. And really, the advocates did a phenomenal job. They had well over 100 people vote for the measure, Republicans and Democrats. It will go to the Senate, and we'll see what happens with it. I think it's certainly part of this broader property tax discussion. Is how do we bring property tax relief to all Texans? Certainly, I think the highest priority on that is homeowners. So I don't want to confused that this is potentially in front of that effort from lawmakers and from the lieutenant governor and the governor, but really it's probably part of the mix. And how can we reduce property taxes in this state? And so I imagine it'll pass on third reading today, and then be a pretty robust conversation in the Senate and between both chambers on how to see some kind of bill or some kind of program like this recreated for capital intensive projects.
Well, another property tax related, similar kind of abatement kind of proposal from Senator Shortner, with Senate Bill 2627 SJR 93. related to generation capacity, right?
That's right.
Talk
That's
about
right.
that one. That's different than Senate Bill 6, but kind of a similar goal in those bills.
Well, you and I have lamented kind of the stalling, if you will, of a lot of the package that came over from the Senate
Right.
to really put steel in the ground to prioritize dispatchable generation resources and find ways to incentivize that and really make it attractive for generators to build new dispatchable generation in the state. And those bills have largely fizzled in the House. There was a House hearing this week in State Affairs, and Chairman Hunter, as we just talked about on House Bill 5, asked some pretty pointed questions of the Independent Market Monitor, of ERCOT, and of the Public Utility Commission. Is this bill necessary at this time based on what you're already implementing with the PCM? And the answer was no from all three of the folks. And so that seemed to be okay. Maybe Senate Bill 7 is dead. And so Senator Schwartner very quickly, this was actually preemptive. I think he saw the writing on the wall. He said, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's take some concepts that have been introduced in the House and some advocates have pushed for a low interest loan program, and then a completion bonus. If you complete in a timely manner, that project could be eligible for a completion bonus. And there's lots of dispatchable resources. They also talk about small modular nuclear. That's not necessarily in a 2-year cycle, but if they're putting into statute a market signal that we want to see more nuclear resources here over the next 10 years, that can start to make a difference, particularly for some of those long lead up time periods on nuclear. And so as the Senate has been able to do basically over the past decade, they can move very quickly. And so this bill was introduced on Monday morning. It had a hearing on Tuesday, and it was voted out of the Senate yesterday. So I imagine it will be over in the House on Monday, and potentially a pretty robust hearing on Wednesday.
Would that
If
also
not,
be in State Affairs?
it would be in State Affairs, if not the following week. But this might be the solution that both sides can agree on. And it has an interesting kind of component with the property tax discussion, is if you can apply these abatements to these types of projects, you can have a low interest loan, you can have an abatement, and you potentially could have a completion bonus on top of that really would send a pretty clear market signal. We want to see this type of generation. We're going to fast track it. And so that not dissimilar to what we've seen in other states that have really said we're coming up against some hot summers. That was also an announcement from the Public Utility Commission this week that on their seasonal adjustment review, they thought it's going to be hot this summer, and that there might be some tight times coming if we have wind drop off or solar drop off. We could be in for some curtailment this summer. So it's extremely timely, and I think both sides are going to act on it here pretty quickly.
Man, that would be great. That would be great. We just need some, the PCM. I don't know anyone who thinks that's the real answer. It's amazing to me that testimony was offered. But anyway, it just would be nice to have some kind of incentive to get that steel in the ground. So good for
That's right.
Senator Schwartner.
Absolutely.
So I guess, it was kind of a quiet week from the speaker and lieutenant governor on the budget and property tax cuts. And I guess there wasn't a lot of, at least open, out in the open movement on any of that. Maybe there was behind the scenes, though, I guess.
I think that's the right way to think about it. They are definitely negotiating pretty heavily on some of these items. Lieutenant Governor actually just penned an op-ed today in the Dallas Morning News, talking about the property tax system or proposal out of the Senate, and so and really his high hopes that an expansion of the homestead exemption really provides the needed tax relief that he's tried to prioritize for homeowners, and
Yeah.
that the Senate has prioritized. So we'll see if that's the type of items that kind of breaks the log jam. I don't know if you've received these or not, but I've received text messages from some interest group talking about former President Trump endorses the Senate tax plan. So
Oh, I haven't gotten that one.
they're definitely kind of pulling out all the stops, trying to get some advocacy on that front, and negotiations back and forth between the two chambers. So that's probably the big thing on the property tax front, added in with some of this electricity and heavy capital project investment.
So we got 4 weeks left. What's next week looking like? We're running out of time.
They are running out of time. As I mentioned, the House is butting up against some deadlines to get House bills off the floor. So they've got to do that next week. So they'll go until about midnight on Thursday. If you've ever been here in May, it's always a fun time. They work right up until midnight, and then there's always the member from El Paso say, well, it's not midnight in El Paso, let's go another hour. And then they either play with the clock a little bit, or they call it right there. And so it's a fun last 5 minutes, because they do about 20 bills in the last 5 minutes, and but so that'll be what's coming up for them next week. As I said, they'll work all day today, Friday, Saturday, tomorrow. This will probably be their last Sunday really off, and then that mad dash till sine die at the end of the month.
Man, fun never ends. Well, it's a good reason why these sessions are only 140 days long, right?
That's right. That's right.
Well, anything else for the good of the order? We can get you out of there before the fire alarm sounds.
Well, I mentioned to you we were going to have some positive press on the restem bill.
Oh, right.
It didn't move anywhere, but we saw a very nice op-ed from Railroad Commissioner Jim Wright in World Oil magazine that was published this week. So really a great piece by him advocating for that type of program. The advocates for that, we've got our work cut out for us. We need to go meet with the comptroller's office and really kind of build this from the ground up. We've seen it pass in North Dakota. It's going to be a while before the Texas legislature meets again in 2025. So I would imagine other states will take a look at this and see if it's an opportunity to really get investment back into marginal fields, and try to increase production from those marginal fields. We think it's a great opportunity, but it's going to take some R&D. This is not something that can just be plug and play off the shelf. And so we've seen that in the past. The Texas legislature has recognized that there's some opportunities for innovation, but that they've got to kind of find the right sweet spot to attract that type of project to Texas. So we'll see if we can do a little work over the interim and then lead into 2025 with it. But wanted to plug Commissioner Wright and thank him for that op-ed and advocating on that type of program.
Yeah, he's done such a great job as commissioner. All three of the commissioners really do a fine job and don't get a lot of appreciation for it. So I'm glad you got that in. What
Absolutely.
else? Anything else?
I'm actually, it's so busy here. I thought I would take about 24 hours and go to Washington D.C. So
Oh,
so
God.
I'm gonna do that next week. You've certainly worked with Tim Stewart over the years, and I'm
Oh,
gonna
yeah. One of my
a
favorite
different group
people.
up there, Domestic Energy Producers Alliance. So Jerry Simmons does a great job up there and out of Oklahoma. And so they've got a board meeting next week, and so I'm going to fly in for that temporarily and talk about Texas, talk about some of the things we've engaged in on methane tax and those regulations that are coming soon. We're still waiting on EPA, and then what we see kind of around the corner and down the road. Permitting reform. I'm glad you're banging away on that. We had the Republican
Yeah.
bills filed this week, and Senator Manchin's supposed to drop his very, very soon, if not already today. So excited to see that conversation be taken back up. We need that takeaway conversation happening to benefit the Permian Basin and other parts of the state. That LNG has become a great tool for the rest of the world to meet their
Sure
energy
has.
needs in the absence of, uh, um, let's say, legal energy from Russia. I know it's still getting on the
Right.
market, but hopefully it comes with lots of strings and penalties attached to it. But that Texas LNG has really been a godsend to Europe and to Africa and Asia and all parts in between. So
Just
certainly,
one more part of the energy space that Texas leads the world in, right?
yeah, absolutely,
Really
absolutely.
amazing.
Saw a
What a
great I guess it was a meme from Texoga this week that we're up to 40 countries that are receiving Texas LNG. I think during the Trump administration, Secretary Perry was always pretty keen to plug 33 countries on 6 continents and that are receiving Texas LNG. So that's phenomenal
yeah.
that we continue to grow there.
Well, we had that big FERC permitting decision on the Rio Grande LNG project last week, and that's a big deal. That's going to be a huge. I mean, they're going to open 3 trains at the outset. They're
That's
going to be
right.
the first domestic LNG plant to start production with 3 trains. So just amazing growth, and
That's
this
right.
state is so key to the whole energy picture in the United States, and I don't know that we appreciate it enough, frankly. I mean, I
We
really
don't,
don't.
and
I mean,
certainly
I
those
know
new
our state government does. I don't know that the rest of the country appreciates it enough.
those New Yorkers don't. That's for sure. They banned
No, they don't.
COVID this week, so yeah,
Holy cow!
bad for them. Good for the charcoal business, I guess.
I guess so. I guess so. I mean, they're going to have to burn something, right?
That's right. That's right.
Anyway, well, man, it's always great catching up with you. I hope you have a good weekend. I hope you have a weekend at all.
I'm going to
And
spend Saturday here, but then Sunday with the family, so it'll be a good weekend.
always nice to catch up with the family. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll catch up with you again this time next week, and hope everyone enjoys Cinco de Mayo.